Discussion on verses 1 to 6 of 6. This chapter begins by directing people to reflect upon a clear and observable reality, that Allah, the Exalted, alone created and sustains the universe, and therefore He alone is the one from whom refuge should be sought in every situation through His practical obedience, by correctly using the blessings He has granted them as outlined in Islamic teachings. Chapter 114 and Naas, verses 1 to 3.
Say, I seek refuge in the Lord of mankind, the Sovereign of mankind, the God of mankind.
A reflective examination of the human being itself leads to the recognition of this truth. When a person observes the human body with sincerity and an open mind, they find an astonishing level of precision and interdependence. The body is composed of numerous systems, organs, tissues, nerves, and senses that must all function in perfect coordination for life to continue. Each system depends upon the others, and even a minor disruption can lead to illness, weakness, or death. From this perspective, it becomes clear that such a system cannot reasonably be the result of chance or randomness. Just as even a simple structure requires design, knowledge, and maintenance, the human being, with its immense complexity in both physical and psychological functioning, logically points to a deliberate creator and sustainer. The continuous regulation required to maintain life, balance, and stability further indicates ongoing divine control rather than independent existence. In addition, the human being is not only a physical structure but also possesses emotions, cognition, and consciousness. These inner dimensions are equally complex and interwoven, influencing behavior, decision-making, and well-being. Emotional stability, mental clarity, and psychological balance all depend upon countless subtle factors working together in harmony. When this balance is disrupted, distress, confusion, or illness may result, further highlighting the fragile yet precisely maintained nature of human existence. Therefore, reflection upon the human being leads to the understanding that existence itself is dependent, sustained, and governed. This naturally directs a person to recognize that refuge should only be sought with Allah, the Exalted, who alone possesses complete knowledge, power, and authority over all states of being. Seeking refuge with Him is not limited to words, but is expressed through obedience, by aligning one's actions with divine guidance and using the blessings granted in accordance with Islamic teachings. From this understanding, the message of the verses quoted earlier becomes practically clear. Since Allah, the Exalted, is the Lord, Sovereign, and God of mankind, then dependence upon Him should be complete. This dependence is demonstrated through trust in His wisdom, adherence to His guidance, and the recognition that true protection, stability, and balance in life can only be achieved through Him. Ultimately, this reflection leads a person to a deeper awareness that every aspect of human existence, life, health, emotion, and consciousness, remains under continuous divine governance. Recognizing this reality naturally cultivates humility, reliance upon Allah, the Exalted, and a commitment to live in accordance with His guidance, which leads to true balance and peace in both this world and the hereafter. Chapter 114 and Naas, verses 1 to 3.
Say, I seek refuge in the Lord of mankind, the Sovereign of mankind, the God of mankind.
A person who provides for another in some capacity, such as by offering housing or sustenance, is generally considered deserving of gratitude. By this standard, since Allah, the Exalted, is the one who has granted every blessing in existence, it is only just that all gratitude is directed to Him. Gratitude, in its truest form, is not limited to outward expressions, but is rooted in intention, speech, and action. With regard to intention, gratitude means that a person performs all actions solely to attain the pleasure of Allah, the Exalted. Any action carried out for ulterior motives will not carry spiritual reward, as has been warned in a hadith found in Jami at Tirmidhi, number 3154. A clear indicator of sincerity is that a person does not seek praise, recognition, or repayment from others for what they do. Gratitude through speech involves maintaining good speech, speaking beneficial words, or remaining silent when speech would be harmful. Gratitude through action involves utilizing every blessing, whether health, wealth, time, or ability, in ways that are pleasing to Allah, the Exalted, as outlined in the Holy Quran and the traditions of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. When these three dimensions of gratitude are combined, a person is guided towards increased blessings and inner peace in both worlds, through achieving a balanced mental and physical state and correctly placing everything and everyone within their life. Chapter 14 Ibrahim, verse 7.
If you are grateful, I will surely increase you in favor.
Furthermore, when a person owns something, it is understood that they have the right to determine how it is used. Since Allah, the Exalted, is the creator, owner, and sustainer of everything in existence, including every individual and every possession, then all control ultimately belongs to Him alone. From this perspective, it is both rational and appropriate that a person submits to His guidance, recognizing that obedience to Allah, the Exalted, is obedience to the One who truly owns all things. In a similar way, when something is entrusted to someone as a loan, the borrower is expected to use it in accordance with the wishes of its owner. In this analogy, all worldly blessings are understood as a trust rather than absolute possessions. A person is therefore accountable for how they utilize what has been given to them, and the proper repayment of this trust is to use these blessings in ways that are pleasing to Allah, the Exalted. By contrast, the blessings of paradise are described as a gift, where there is no restriction or trial in their use. Chapter 7 Al-Araf, verse 43.
And they will be called, "This is paradise which you have been made to inherit for what you used to do."
From this understanding, a person is encouraged not to confuse temporary worldly trusts with eternal divine gifts, and to recognize the different responsibilities attached to each. Chapter 114 and Naas, verse 2.
The sovereign of mankind.
Allah, the Exalted, is the possessor of absolute sovereignty, a sovereignty that is entirely free from imperfection, limitation, or deficiency. His dominion has no beginning and no end, and it is not subject to increase, decrease, or constraint. He exercises complete authority over all creation through perfect management, decree, and judgment, without reliance upon any partner, helper, or assistant. Nothing can oppose His will or prevent its execution. At the same time, He is entirely self-sufficient, needing nothing from creation, while every created being is in absolute need of Him. When a person acknowledges Allah, the Exalted, as the true King, this recognition naturally entails acceptance of servitude to Him. A servant, by definition, submits to the authority of their master. In this sense, true submission involves fulfilling His commands, avoiding His prohibitions, and approaching all decisions with trust in His wisdom. A sincere servant does not object to the decrees of the king, but instead recognizes that his judgment is rooted in perfect knowledge and wisdom, even when the outcome is not immediately understood. Chapter 2 Al-Baqarah, verse 216.
But perhaps you hate a thing and it is good for you, and perhaps you love a thing and it is bad for you. And Allah knows while you know not.
When a person truly recognizes Allah, the Exalted, as the King, they will not turn to others as ultimate sources of help or reliance. Instead, they will seek assistance through obedience to Him and trust in His guidance. Such a person understands that obedience to the Creator brings protection from creation, whereas prioritizing creation over the Creator leads to vulnerability, since creation itself has no independent power to protect or benefit without His permission. This principle is reflected in a hadith of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, found in Sunan Abu Dawood, number 2625, which affirms that there is no obedience to creation when it involves disobedience to the Creator. On a personal level, a person is encouraged to reflect this understanding internally by cultivating discipline over their own inclinations. The spiritual heart is viewed as the governing center of moral direction, and when it is guided by knowledge and sincerity, it directs the rest of the body towards righteous action. This meaning is supported by a hadith found in Sahih Muslim, number 4094, which explains that when the heart is sound, the rest of the body becomes sound, and when it is corrupted, the rest of the body follows in corruption. In this way, a person is encouraged not to become a slave to unchecked desires, but instead to exercise control over them in accordance with divine guidance. True freedom, in this sense, is found in liberation from servitude to desire and attachment to worldly influence. When this state is achieved, a person attains a form of inner mastery where desires no longer dominate them, but are instead disciplined and directed. This is described as a kind of spiritual kingdom, in which the individual governs their impulses through obedience to Allah, the Exalted, rather than being governed by them. Such a person becomes detached from reliance on worldly forces, not in the sense of abandoning responsibility, but in the sense of recognizing that ultimate power and control belong only to Allah, the Exalted. Whoever perfects this state of servitude and discipline is promised elevation in both this world and the next, through obtaining a balanced mental and physical state, and through correctly placing everything and everyone within their life, as true honor lies in complete submission to the only King. The ultimate outcome of those who fulfill the rights of servanthood has been described in the Holy Quran as being granted a high station in the presence of the one who holds absolute sovereignty. Chapter 54 Al-Qiyamah, verse 55.
In a seat of honor near a sovereign, perfect in ability.
Chapter 114 and Naas, verse 3.
The God of mankind.
It is important to recognize that false objects of worship are not limited to physical idols alone. In reality, anything that a person obeys in a way that contradicts the obedience of Allah, the Exalted, can become a form of misplaced devotion. This may include influences such as social trends, cultural expectations, digital platforms, fashion standards, or even the pressures of certain individuals. In this sense, whatever a person prioritizes over divine guidance becomes, in practice, something they are submitting to. Chapter 9 at Tawbah, verse 31.
They have taken their scholars and monks as lords besides Allah.
This verse highlights that people of earlier communities did not necessarily worship scholars or monks in a direct ritual sense. Rather, they elevated their obedience to these figures to the point where it led them into actions contrary to the guidance of Allah, the Exalted. In this way, obedience itself became a form of worship. A similar principle is also mentioned regarding the devil. Chapter 36 Yasin, verse 60.
Did I not enjoin upon you, O children of Adam, that you not worship Satan, for indeed he is to you a clear enemy?
Here, worship is understood in the sense of following and obeying influences that lead away from obedience to Allah, the Exalted. While most people do not consciously intend to worship the devil, they may still fall into this category through actions that align with his influence when they knowingly choose disobedience. From this perspective, persistent obedience to anything that contradicts divine guidance places a person under the influence of competing masters. This often manifests as social pressure, workplace expectations, cultural demands, or online influence. When a person attempts to satisfy all of these shifting and inconsistent standards while neglecting divine guidance, it becomes difficult to maintain inner stability. Human expectations are often inconsistent and changeable, and trying to fulfill them all can lead to emotional strain, confusion, and dissatisfaction. The result of this divided loyalty is frequently internal distress, as a person struggles to reconcile conflicting demands without a stable moral foundation. Over time, this can lead to feelings of isolation, anxiety, and emotional exhaustion, particularly when external approval becomes the primary goal of behavior. In contrast, when a person centers their life around the obedience of Allah, the Exalted, their direction becomes clearer and less fragmented, reducing the pressure of constantly shifting expectations. Ultimately, this perspective encourages a person to evaluate what they are truly prioritizing in their daily choices. Anything that leads them away from obedience to Allah, the Exalted, is to be carefully avoided, regardless of how socially accepted or appealing it may appear. By doing so, a person seeks consistency, balance, and clarity in life, and aligns their actions with what is understood to bring lasting peace in both this world and the next. This chapter concludes by urging a person to actively seek protection from Allah, the Exalted, not only through words but through lived obedience to Him, against all influences, whether intentional or unintentional, that draw them towards disobedience. This protection is sought by turning away from anything that weakens faith, distorts judgment, or encourages harmful behavior, and by strengthening one's connection with divine guidance. Chapter 114 and Naas, verses 4-6.
From the evil of the retreating whisperer, who whispers evil into the breasts of mankind. From among the jinn and mankind.
These verses highlight that harmful influence can come from both unseen and seen sources, including people and environments that subtly or directly encourage wrongdoing. On a practical level, this serves as a warning about the impact of companionship and social influence, as surrounding oneself with negative or misleading influences has consistently been a major cause of moral and spiritual deviation. Human beings are, by their very nature, social creatures whose beliefs, habits, and character are shaped by the people they choose to associate with. Whether the influence is uplifting or corrupting, whether it appears immediately or settles gradually over time, companionship always leaves an imprint. It is never a neutral force. It is one of the most powerful factors in determining a person's values, emotional state, and ultimate direction in life. This universal truth was emphasized by the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, in a hadith found in Sunan Abu Dawood, number 4833, which highlights the profound impact that one's companions have on their spiritual and moral condition. A person inevitably absorbs the attitudes, behaviors, and outlook of those they spend time with, just as someone who enters a shop filled with perfume leaves carrying its fragrance, while one who sits near a blacksmith departs with the smell of smoke clinging to their clothes. For this reason, those who surround themselves with sincere, righteous, and mindful individuals will find their own hearts naturally inclined towards sincerity, humility, and obedience to Allah, the Exalted. Such companions remind them of their responsibilities, encourage them to use their blessings correctly, and inspire them to prepare for their accountability on the Day of Judgment. In the company of the righteous, a person's heart is uplifted, their intentions purified, and their conduct refined. They learn balance, mentally, spiritually, and physically, and are guided toward a life of purpose, stability, and contentment. Their thoughts become clearer, their priorities more ordered, and their emotional state more grounded. Conversely, those who choose the company of the heedless and misguided inevitably begin to reflect their attitudes and behavior. The change may begin subtly, almost imperceptibly, but over time it erodes spiritual awareness and weakens the connection with Allah, the Exalted. Such individuals become increasingly prone to following their desires, misusing the blessings granted to them, and neglecting their ultimate purpose. This corruption of the soul distorts their perception of right and wrong, causing them to misplace priorities, misuse relationships, and lose harmony in their lives. When obedience to Allah, the Exalted, is replaced with the pursuit of fleeting pleasures or misguided ideals, the heart becomes unsettled. No amount of material comfort can fill the emptiness created by spiritual neglect. A person in such company may outwardly appear successful or content, yet inwardly they suffer from anxiety, instability, and dissatisfaction. Their relationships become strained, their thoughts disordered, and their hearts weighed down by guilt, confusion, and regret. Thus, the consequences of poor companionship extend far beyond social influence. They lead to emotional turmoil in this world, and spiritual ruin in the next. In contrast, righteous companionship nurtures inner peace, strengthens faith, and prepares a person for eternal success. It protects the heart from corruption, reinforces good character, and keeps one mindful of their purpose. For this reason, a wise person is always selective in their friendships, choosing companions who remind them of Allah, the Exalted, and whose character motivates them to walk the path of truth, virtue, and sincerity. Chapter 114 and Naas, verses 4-6.
From the evil of the retreating whisperer, who whispers evil into the breasts of mankind. From among the jinn and mankind.
Practically speaking, one of the key reasons people become negatively influenced by others is the tendency to uncritically adopt the dominant views and behaviors of their society. These prevailing patterns are often shaped and reinforced by influential groups, including elites and institutions, whose priorities may be driven by material ambition, popularity, or self-interest rather than moral or spiritual guidance. For this reason, a person is encouraged not to follow the majority simply because it is the majority. Widespread behavior is not a reliable indicator of truth or correctness, particularly when it conflicts with divine guidance. When a person repeatedly sees large numbers of people acting in a certain way, they may assume that such behavior must be correct or socially acceptable, and therefore imitate it without reflection. However, this assumption can be misleading, as history repeatedly demonstrates that majority opinion has often been proven incorrect when reassessed through knowledge, evidence, and time. Chapter 6 Al-An'am, verse 116.
And if you obey most of those upon the earth, they will mislead you from the way of Allah. They follow not except assumption, and they are not but guessing.
From this perspective, unthinking conformity is discouraged because it replaces reflection with imitation. A person is instead encouraged to use the intellect and capacity for reasoning that has been granted to them. This involves evaluating beliefs, behaviors, and social norms carefully, rather than accepting them automatically due to popularity or pressure. Blind imitation in matters of moral and spiritual importance is particularly criticized because it can lead a person away from meaningful reflection and accountability. Islam therefore encourages learning, understanding, and conscious practice of guidance, rather than passive repetition of inherited habits or social trends. Chapter 12 Yusuf, verse 108.
Say, this is my way, I invite to Allah with insight, I and those who follow me.
A person is expected to examine whether their actions align with divine guidance, even if doing so places them in contrast with the majority. By adopting this reflective approach, a person becomes less vulnerable to social pressure and more grounded in principle. Their decisions are then shaped by knowledge and conviction rather than imitation, allowing them to maintain consistency in both worldly conduct and spiritual responsibility. Chapter 114 and Naas, verses 4-6.
From the evil of the retreating whisperer, who whispers evil into the breasts of mankind. From among the jinn and mankind.
This form of protection is most effectively attained through the development of strong faith. Strong faith is essential because it enables a person to remain steadfast in the obedience of Allah, the Exalted, in all circumstances, whether in times of ease or hardship. It provides stability, consistency, and clarity in decision-making, ensuring that a person is not easily swayed by changing emotions, external pressures, or personal desires. Strong faith is cultivated through learning, understanding, and applying the clear guidance and evidences found in the Holy Quran and the traditions of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. These sources explain how sincere obedience to Allah, the Exalted, leads to inner peace, balance, and well-being in both this world and the next. Through reflection on this guidance and consistent practice of it, a person gradually develops conviction and certainty. In contrast, a lack of knowledge of Islamic teachings often results in weaker faith. A person in this state becomes more vulnerable to acting on impulse or desire, especially when divine guidance appears to conflict with immediate personal preference. This occurs because they have not fully understood or internalized the wisdom behind obedience to Allah, the Exalted, including the fact that restraining desires in accordance with divine guidance ultimately leads to lasting peace and stability. For this reason, a person is encouraged to pursue knowledge that strengthens certainty of faith, and to translate that knowledge into consistent action. Faith is not only strengthened by belief, but also by practice, reflection, and disciplined behavior aligned with guidance. This includes using all blessings, such as time, ability, wealth, and opportunities, in the manner prescribed by Islamic teachings. When this approach is adopted, a person is more likely to experience balance in their inner and outer life. Their decisions become more coherent, their emotional responses more stable, and their priorities more properly aligned. As a result, they are better able to maintain a balanced mental and physical state, and to place people, responsibilities, and worldly matters in their proper positions, leading to greater peace and consistency in both worldly life and spiritual understanding. To conclude, a person is called upon to sincerely accept and consistently put into practice the teachings of Islam for their own benefit, even when this requires setting aside personal desires or immediate inclinations. Their approach should resemble that of a wise and reflective patient who places full trust in the guidance of a skilled physician. Such a patient understands that a prescribed treatment may be bitter, demanding, or restrictive, yet still accepts it because it is ultimately intended for their well-being and long-term recovery. In the same way, adherence to divine guidance leads to genuine well-being, bringing about a balanced mental and physical state, and ensuring that every blessing, responsibility, and relationship in a person's life is properly ordered and placed. Just as a qualified physician possesses knowledge that goes beyond the patient's understanding, Allah, the Exalted, possesses complete and perfect knowledge of human nature, circumstances, and outcomes. For this reason, only He can provide guidance that consistently leads to true balance, stability, and success in both this world and the next. Human knowledge, despite continuous advancement in research and experience, remains inherently limited. It cannot account for every possible situation, anticipate every consequence with certainty, or fully eliminate all forms of emotional and physical difficulty. It is also affected by bias, incomplete information, and restricted perspective. As a result, it cannot replace divine guidance in achieving complete and lasting human well-being. Allah, the Exalted, has conveyed this perfect guidance through the Holy Quran and the traditions of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. A person is able to observe a clear difference in the outcomes of those who align their lives with this guidance and those who turn away from it. Those who implement it sincerely often display greater clarity, discipline, and balance in their affairs, whereas those who neglect it frequently experience confusion, misprioritization, and inner unrest. At the same time, Islamic teachings do not require blind acceptance without thought. Rather, they encourage reflection, reasoning, and sincere consideration, so that truth is recognized through clear signs and understanding. Chapter 12 Yusuf, verse 108.
Say, this is my way, I invite to Allah with insight, I and those who follow me.
In addition, it must be recognized that control over the human heart, the true center of emotional stability and inner peace, belongs solely to Allah, the Exalted. He determines a person's experience of joy, sorrow, contentment, and distress. Chapter 53 and Najm, verse 43.
And that it is He who makes one laugh and weep.
This shows that a person's inner emotional condition is ultimately subject to the decree of Allah, the Exalted. For this reason, enduring peace of mind cannot be attained independently of Him. From this understanding, it becomes clear that genuine tranquility is bestowed by Allah, the Exalted, upon those who sincerely endeavor to align their lives with His guidance. When a person makes proper use of the blessings they have been granted in accordance with Islamic teachings, they are not merely fulfilling a divine command, but also placing themselves on a path that fosters balance, clarity, and enduring inner serenity. Chapter 16 and Nahl, verse 97.
Whoever does righteousness, whether male or female, while he is a believer, we will surely cause him to live a good life, and we will surely give them their reward in the hereafter according to the best of what they used to do.
All praise is due to Allah, Lord of the worlds, and may peace and blessings be upon His final messenger, Muhammad, his noble family and companions.